Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Jake, this is Nadia, and today we are talking about Gladiator 2. Were you entertained?
I was.
Some context before you get into your review. We'll do spoiler free and then we'll do spoilers because we got to see we're invited by some nice people to a press screening, so we got to see it a little earlier than normal. To get ready to see Gladiator 2, we saw the first Gladiator. Somehow neither of us had seen. Whoa. You were just like kind of passing through. You were like, maybe I'll watch the whole thing, maybe not. And we were just glued to the screen watching the first Gladiator.
Well, we thought it'd be interesting if like
one of us had seen it
and one of us hadn't. And then I saw a little bit of the beginning and then I was like, okay, actually, I guess both of us are going to see it because I actually want to watch this. So
I'm glad we saw it because this movie is definitely in dialogue with that movie a lot. There's a lot. It really feels like you have to see it.
There are flashbacks in this second film that will give you context of the first film, but
it
would be better if you saw the first one.
It's a complicated relationship, I think, that this movie has with its past self. You know, it's the same director, Ridley Scott. But all right, before we get into just talking about Gladiator 1 or Gladiator 2, I just want to go ahead, break the ice. What was your actual feelings about this movie? Because I have no idea what you thought.
Okay, I looked up the premise of the second film, which I never do usually, but I'm like, that's interesting. Because the first Gladiator film, I thought, ends in a
It's very conclusive.
It feels conclusive. So I'm like, I wonder what they're going to do with the second one. Mm-hmm. Is it like a completely different thing? I didn't really know how I felt about that because sometimes you can ruin a good film by just overdoing it just for the sake of money. It looked like they were going to do the same thing that they did in the first one, just make it a few changes. It's like, I don't like that because it just feels like a money grab to me. Well, I was thankfully wrong. They did bring a lot of the things from the first movie, but they did it in a way that I thought had enough changes to where it was tasteful. They had sentiments from the first film, and they definitely looked at what worked in the first film and brought that over the second film. But kind of the next level. It progressed. It wasn't redundant, or it didn't feel redundant to me. Would say that I would rate it like probably 9 out of 10. I really liked the second one.
What would you rate the first one?
I'd probably rate it like 9 out of 10 too, honestly. I rate it pretty equally. I had more expectation for the second film because I'm like, okay, let's see where this goes. I would definitely rate the first one 9 out of 10. Second one, I would either rate it somewhere between 8.5 and 9 because I don't think I liked the first half of the movie, even though I liked it, but I didn't like it as much as the second half of the film. You know, with these types of film, it's really gruesome. It really has a lot of like allegories on there, metaphors, invited to think deeper about our society or society that was there, and then kind of at least I compared it to how we live today. Depiction of animal cruelty, which I do feel like is necessary, but it was hard for me to watch some of it. Although it's hard to watch, I do like the realism there. Felt like in the second film, without getting into spoiler, there were things that were annoying, very minor things, but it just felt a little bit more convenient. I thought Denzel Washington did a really good job in the second film. In the first film, there's more of a mentor-mentee relationship. In the second film, they tried to portray something similar, but with a twist. I found it very interesting, fascinating, just because I studied Roman history for one of my classes in college. I really loved the visuals of Rome, how you go back there and you have this like relationship between gladiators and slaves and buying freedom versus kind of being trapped in that. I also loved the depiction of people just suffering. Like I love that there was in some of the scenes from first and the second one, there was depictions of like campgrounds right outside of homeless people. And, you know, you have this big grandiose arena with people who are rich. And then right outside of it, homeless people struggling and begging for money. And, you know, where do the gladiators kind of fit in that? Because they are taken from their home. They're kind of forced into the situation where they have to fight for survival in order to buy back their freedom. But at the same time, are they more fortunate than people who are just living on the street because they get to do XYZ and they actually have the opportunity to buy something or do something different and change their destiny? So, you know, you kind of understand and see those different things. And I feel like the movie dives very deep because of these portrayals. So yeah, I liked it. What did you think?
I disagree with you on basically everything.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. All right.
I was severely disappointed by this movie. It really did not live up to my expectations, which, you know,
the second film or the first one?
Well, the second one. I had loved the first one. Okay. And I just seen it for the first time, you know, like the night before we saw this. Maybe that would color my expectations and what I was hoping to expect. But I also was kind of lowering my expectations because our recent cinema experience with Ridley Scott film was Napoleon. And I think that's a much closer movie to bring to Gladiator 2 because in terms of visual style, in terms of structure. It's also written by David Scarpa, who has been working with Ridley Scott lately. And my issue with this movie is largely my issue with Ridley Scott. And I know there are people who defend him constantly. I think there's amazing Ridley Scott movies, but I think that at this point in his career, he makes a ton of movies, and I think he's in his 80s now. He's had an amazing career, but at this point, it just feels like he is sleepwalking through movies. I don't mean to be rude or anything. It's just like compare the way, like the craft that was put into Gladiator, when you compare that directly to Gladiator 2, it's just like you can't help but feel kind of sad. The screenwriting is not the same. Doesn't have to be the same, but it's not, the quality is not up to the level. The storytelling is not up to that level. The filmmaking is not up to, again, it's way more, of course, we're in a different era now, but part of the wonder and the charm of these like sword and sandals epics is seeing real things, animals, tigers. In the first one, there's a kind of like tangibility to everything. Watching that first Gladiator movie, I was struck like every 20 seconds by an image that is perfectly composed, the most beautiful lighting. It's just like a painting. That movie is visually, whatever you say about the story, if you think it's basic or whatever, I think the story works really well in that movie, mostly because of Joaquin Phoenix, who just gives an amazing performance. And his character is really interesting as a villain. I'll get to that later, talking about the villains in Gladiator 2. Every moment is so beautiful. Like the framing, the choreography, the blocking, it is just incredible. And that's where I think Ridley Scott is best at, as a filmmaker. Now you look at how he shoots things, and I don't know how much has changed, but clearly Gladiator was filmed on film. So it is going to have a different look. Pretty confident this movie was shot on digital. It feels and looks more digital, and it's very washed out, more gray and less like full bright contrast. The composition of the shots, it's different. Feels like standard coverage you'd get in like a TV show. Like, we're moving fast, and I understand they shot this movie pretty quickly from what I've heard. I know Ridley Scott shoots with lots of cameras rolling so that he can get lots of coverage, and then it's edited together, and that's what it feels like. It feels like, all right, we got to get moving, we got to get all these cameras here, and then we'll put it together. It doesn't feel like deliberate choices were made before. It feels like kind of pieced together. I just did not love how the movie visually told its story. It felt very basic, especially right after watching Gladiator, where there's a sense of intentionality to every moment. A totally different thing. Sorry, I know I'm getting into the weeds here.
Go ahead.
But that was like my biggest red flag, because the movie opens with a beautiful painting flashback of Gladiator, through the title. And I'm like, this is great. It's like colorful and big, and it's making you think about the first movie. And then we start seeing these bland, dialogue shot scenes. There's action sequences, but there's tons of visual effects that don't seem seamless. I'm sure there's lots of seamless ones, but it just feels, just like how you'd expect Rome in a 2024 digitally shot, epic to look like. I don't know. I was thinking about Indiana Jones 5, where they go to the past in that movie. It's fine, but it's just like, man, what happened? Like, what the hell happened to our movie industry that it's different, and I don't like it. So
do you feel like it's more a couple things. Do you feel like because you mentioned Joaquin Phoenix for the first one?
Yeah.
Do you think that the first one was so good because Joaquin Phoenix really delivered, whereas the second film you didn't feel like the actors delivered as much, or do you really feel like it's the directing?
It's the script, and I think it's the filmmaking. It's the directing. I think the directing is a big part of it, because I'm mostly in there like, all right, I want to see like a visual like beauty. I want to see something grand and impressive, and I didn't get that. Okay, then what about the script? Am I really carried along with the story and these characters? No. It just felt like what they do with these kind of like legacy sequels. It felt more like a legacy sequel than a sequel. Okay, what do we remember about Gladiator? What's the big thing? All right, revenge, right? We got revenge. Creepy, weird emperors that we hate. Like Joaquin Phoenix. We need someone like that. Well, let's make him even weirder. Let's have two of them. Like that's even better. And those characters, I think those actors are great. I love Fred Hutchinson. I think that's his name. And the other guy, they were great emperors. From the instant you meet them, it is so cartoonish. cartoonishly over the top. It's like a parody of Joaquin Phoenix's character, who, again, we remember him as being creepy, but he's also a character with lots of depth. You know, he loves his father, but he hates him. He wants power, but he doesn't know what to do. And that part of what is so great about the first Gladiator is its simplicity, but it sets up those character dynamics so clearly, and it's so simple. Russell Crowe, Joaquin Phoenix, it's personal. Like, the revenge is personal, and in this movie, it's such a different thing. We'll get into this in spoilers. I don't want to talk about any of the spoilers because I don't want to ruin it. The character, Paul Mescal's character, is just so unimpressive through the beginning of the movie. They do one thing with his character, and it's the most expected thing. And from there, we're supposed to care. It's not enough for this type of revenge epic. It's just not enough. Then everyone will tell you, like, the real star of the movie was Denzel Washington. I really didn't know why he was in this movie until much later in the movie. Like, maybe like right before the third act starts, you go, oh, Denzel is actually interesting. Like, his character is actually really interesting. That's what the movie's about. But until then, you're just like, all right, Paul Mescal's doing Gladiator, but less good. There is a sequence with digital, like, rabid monkeys. Were they monkeys? I watched that scene and I'm just like, what are we doing? Is this a sci-fi movie? I'm like, what is happening on screen? It's so just lifeless and digital, and it looks like the team didn't have enough time to work on the effects, because it's just like, man, there was something so real and tangible about that first movie, making us feel like we were there. Now it's just like they're fighting monkeys and they're like digital and jumping around and everything. It's just, I was so not sold on it. We'll get into the script stuff more because I have a lot to say about that. And I was just waiting for it to end. I really was. I'm like, you know what? I've had enough of these images. Look, I don't want to be this person who's just like, oh, it didn't look good. It goes deeper than that. There was nothing like inspiring or moving or like beautiful on screen. It just felt like sludge. I'm sorry.
I think there's more that we can go on this in the spoiler section.
We should move on.
But what would you rate it?
I would give it maybe 3 or 4 out of 10.
And what would you rate the first one?
8.
Wow. Okay. So a big difference.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I think you wouldn't recommend it.
If you want to see it, go see it. But I took nothing out of it.
So
I would
according to my dear man here, if you watch the second one, then you might expect disappointment. I think most
people will just go, yeah, it was entertaining, but definitely not as good as Gladiator.
Okay. For me, the second one, I do agree that there is a lack of depth there. And when you mention especially the villain in the second film and the first film, you know what? You did change my mind a little bit.
Oh, I'm turning you into a hater.
No. I still think it was good, but I would give it, like, because earlier I said 8.5 to 9. I would give it 8 out of 10 because I do see some of the points. Did you think I liked it?
Did you think I liked it when we watched it?
You know what? I did. Jake and I don't talk about movies like
until we sit
here. Now, I guess, recommend it from me.
Let's talk spoilers.
3, 2, 1.
Spoilers.
Can I talk about like some? Because I feel like you have a lot more venting than I.
I do. Please have your say.
So okay, yeah. I'll have my say and then I'll let you just go.
Okay, great.
So I do agree about the depth of the second film versus the first one, because when you talked about the arc of Joaquin Phoenix's character, there's so much in there that's like, you could see the pain, but also there's the pain, the fact that like his father loved a soldier who's basically a stranger before he loved his own flesh and blood. Definitely, it's not because of what we see from our perspective. It's his perspective. It's like, you took my father from me, you took my sister from me, motivated by the fact that if this one person was out of my life, then I could be who I'm meant to be. And
also, can I say this too? He was at the heights of power. It's a Count of Monte Cristo story.
Yeah.
He's brought down into the dumps and he has to level back up. And it's a totally different dynamic. Yeah.
Exactly. So when Russell Crowe's character comes back as the Gladiator, Maximus, why won't you die? You can really see the personal vengeance and motivation that Joaquin Phoenix has. In the second film, Joseph Quinn, because there are two of them, I feel like the second ruler wasn't really as important as Joseph Quinn, because he was kind of the one that was really the conductor of the whole show. They made him so dumb and stupid that it renders obsolete, in my opinion, because as soon as Joseph Quinn dies, then it's like, yeah, you're gonna die because you're being controlled and manipulated, and it's really easy to manipulate you. But Joseph Quinn, I don't think he did anything bad as an actor. I actually like him as an actor. Saw him in Stranger Things, and I thought he was really good. I don't think that the script gave him anything to really give him motivation except for the pure thirst for violence and murder.
They're just psychopaths. It's the most mustache twirling villains you'd ever see.
And it's kind of like funny when you watch American Psycho, where it's just he's a psychopath for the sake of psychopath. But even if you look at like American Psycho, there's something motivation there, like competition needing to be better, like the ego there. For this one, I didn't see those motivations come through as much. There was nothing really like substantial there. Whereas Denzel Washington's character, there was something else there that we didn't get to explore as far as dialogue or understand his background, but you could tell
until later in the movie.
But you could tell he rose to power. Even though he's a psychopath himself, he's been somewhere where he had to earn his keeps, and so he's really motivated by power. He's really motivated by strategic decisions that lead to, even if it leads to more corruption, at his benefit, because he never wants to go back to where he came from, and therefore he's disowned basically his old self and assimilated into someone who's completely powered and motivated by will to survive. And survival for him means being at the top of the game where you cannot be displaced again. That one came through, which is why I think Denzel Washington's character shined a lot more than the two
other villains. I mean, there's like 4 villains really, and they have interchanging. It's funny because it just feels like Paul Mescal, like after one villain out of the way or changes, then he's like, okay, well, there's this other guy who I hate more, and this other guy I hate more. It's like, it shouldn't be that complicated. Our heart isn't in it for him to take down the powerful, It's not Robin Hood. It's, I want to have revenge on the person who killed my wife, which is how the movie starts. In the most obvious, all right, well, his wife got killed. Pedro Pascal, the general. And it's not even like a personal thing. It's just like they were in battle, and the wife dies. And now Paul Mescal is like, well, I want to kill Pedro Pascal, who turns out to be his mother's husband now. Mm-hmm. And who is actually a good guy who's like, man, I've been doing all this battle, but I don't know if I should keep doing it. Maybe it's not good. And they want to take down the emperors, who are psychopathic villains. And so it's very clear we're like, okay, it's more complicated because he wants revenge on Pedro Pascal, but he's actually a good guy. It's just not super compelling. And then once Pedro Pascal is out of the picture, then he's like, well, actually, I want to kill the emperors. Actually, I want to kill Denzel Washington because he shot my mom, who I hate, for most of the movie. And okay, a big issue with this is that much of our interest in Paul Mescal's character hinges on our knowledge that he is Maximus's son, which is not spelled out to us in this movie. We have to be thinking about the first movie.
Really, it is spelled out in this film.
It's spelled out later, but through the first half of the movie, we're asking, and I was asking, okay, how much does he remember of his childhood? What happened? How did he end up in this position? Because the end of Gladiator, it seems like everything's fine. The Senate is restored. So how did this happen? We don't really find out until later. So I was just going like, okay, I don't really care about the dead wife character who has 2 lines in the whole movie. It's just such a trope now.
You don't care about the dead wife?
Well, not this one. I mean,
Oh.
Anyways, we don't really care about that story because it's just such a rushed, trope. Like, okay, his wife died, so now he's sad. It's so different when you think about Gladiator. It's like there's a sequence. There's like a thrilling sequence where he's trying to stop the Romans from killing his wife and kid, who he's been trying to see for so long. And it's, again, a personal relationship between him and Joaquin Phoenix. It's like a brother dynamic. Whereas this, it's like he saw Pedro Pascal once, and his wife got shot with arrows. And Pedro Pascal is even a good guy. And we do not know how much he's aware of his upbringing, whether he wants to take back the throne. He's like a reluctant king. And it takes way too long for us to find out who our main character actually is. We don't know what he wants deep down regarding the politics, regarding the throne, how much he remembers, how he feels about his mom, how he feels about his dad. We don't know any of that.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
So the first film, I feel like, doesn't tell you at all. You have strong hints that he's Maximus' son.
Yeah.
but you don't know 100%. In the second film, it does eventually unravel itself that he is indeed Maximus's son, but I feel like everything that leads to that is intentional, and you're just saying that it takes a lot longer than it should.
I think that they did intend to do it that way, and I think it was a bad mistake because it made us question what he actually knows, and I feel like we needed to be on his level, to really experience his story through his eyes, because he's our entrance character.
I disagree with you, because I thought it was really interesting when you look back in the beginning how he criticizes Rome from the very first scene that we see him in the battle scene, and then he is anti-Rome just for it to be revealed that he is a Roman himself, not just a Roman but a prince.
But we knew he was that, we knew who he is.
Yeah, but it's like interesting how much hatred he has because of what he's been through. And a lot of it comes from his mom abandoning him, or at least from his perspective.
The information wasn't given to us in a satisfying way. I'll just say that. On to the whole Denzel situation. The Denzel character, they're making him out to be like the Oliver Reed character in the first one, who's kind of who purchased Paul Mescal, and then he's training him, and you don't really know if he's good or bad. Turns out he's very bad. He just wants to manipulate and seize power. The politics in the story is extremely over the top and very dumbed down. It's just like, oh, if you control the masses, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just very telling us. There is a scene where Denzel's great in the movie. He brings a spark of life to all the scenes he's in. But his dialogue, he's just like, well, that's politics, my friend. Just very like, okay, we get it. Yeah, very on the nose. Like, thinks it's more clever than it actually is. It's very like, if I get this character, if I get this emperor to be hated, then I can take over.
It sounds more like a book rather than a movie, because you're kind of like understanding the inner dialogues from a book rather than the movie.
Yeah, no, it's not good dialogue. And then the climax of the movie, it comes down to Denzel Washington and Paul Mescal having a fight between these two armies that are about to clash. And they have like this thrilling, first off, Denzel is like 70, right? And he's fighting Paul Mescal. It's silly, like whatever. It's like
he looks like 40.
It's like a Jake Paul, Mike Tyson situation. So they made it work. They sold it. But then Paul Mescal gives this speech talking about like liberal values basically, and like we got to come together and not have these tyrants rule Rome. Blah blah blah. And he gives this speech to these massive armies, and it's so inspiring that they put away their swords. And it's such a corny stuff. It's just such a cartoonish version of Rome. And I'm not saying the first Gladiator was a realistic depiction of Rome, but at least they tried to keep it somewhat grounded. This is just so goofy, and we're better than this. Let's not have tyrants anymore. Let's just put our swords down and trust me. You don't
like happy endings?
Lazy and just ugh.
What would you have liked it for it to end?
I don't know. Have Paul Mescal die? I don't know.
But then wouldn't it be the repeat of the first film?
They could have done different things with Paul Mescal's character as the son. I think that it would have been interesting. Maybe we introduce him as like rising up again in the politics, and then something happens to him and he has to become a gladiator like his dad. Since we're so similar to the first one, why not just bring in those other good elements, I
actually really like that it ended the way that it did, because it differentiated it from the first film.
Another thing that annoys me is they literally do, like, they show scenes from Gladiator and then they do an extended, like, kind of like when movies will go like, oh, the last movie actually didn't end happily because the scene immediately after the ending of the movie was tragic.
Like with the son, like, hey, people are going to come after you.
I'm surprised more people aren't pissed about this, because they literally retcon the end of Gladiator, where you think there's triumphant Maximus dies for a good cause, the Senate is restored. They cut back to that end of the movie. Of course, they have it all washed out, or else it'd look really vibrant and weird next to the rest of this movie. They have it, and then that scene immediately after is his mom, Lucius's mom. Okay, I got to send you away now because people are going to try to kill you. I'm like, I didn't get that impression from the end of it. It seemed like everything was restored. But she's like, no, you got to go away. Bye-bye. And it was just, that was bad. That was genuinely, they could have done something more.
I think that's a good point, because the first film, he's trying to save like her son, Russell Crowe's character, Gladiator Maximus. So flashback at that scene, then it kind of questions like, why did you want, like, your son is actually just as much in danger as he was with your brother. So really,
he was in way more danger when Joaquin Phoenix was empowered, but now you're sending him away.
Yeah, so the stake is like just the same. So why did we risk it all in the first film like that? So it is different though, because like her brother was legit trying to like essay her, and at least in this film she settled down with someone whom she loves and who loves her.
I don't even think it's good. Like, it's not decent.
Look, I think it's good because of what I stated in the non-spoiler section, but also because I do like some of the parts that you don't like for example, the ending, because I think that's what makes it stand out. And I think that if they had done the way that you wanted it to be done, or you expected it to be done, then it would have been very much the same as the first Gladiator. And then like that, if they had to make the second film, which, you know, they don't always, they don't have to. I do agree, doesn't bring anything more it doesn't bring any more substance to the actual like Gladiator franchise, but it is nostalgic. I really like the first one. If I saw the second one and I watched the first one, I don't know if I watched the second one I would have been motivated to watch the first one. I mean, obviously the first one does a much better job than the second film, right? But I don't think it does a bad job. I would give it 8 out of 10. You made me take away 1 to 0.5 points, so you made some good points, but nonetheless, I recommend it.
All right. Agree to disagree. That's
Agree to disagree.
All right. Well, let us know what you thought of Gladiator, or Gladiator 2, if you saw it.
Yeah. Who do you side with?
Thank you for watching, and we will talk to you